I'm Bernina expert Amanda Murphy, and in this video I'll show you how to quilt using my Good Measure Every Leaf Set 1 and 2 quilting templates. Set 1 quilts leaves that are narrower, and Set 2 quilts leaves that are wider, and they both make fantastic designs. Let's begin by quilting a single leaf centered on these crosshairs. So I'm using the center lines on the template to line up my motif. I bring down the foot and then I bring it over to the template to find my starting point. I bring up that bobbin thread and then, very importantly, I bring down the foot again before bringing the template back over so I don't crash down on that template. So I'm going to begin with tiny stitches here. I'm not doing a show quilt. So I started with tiny stitches and now I'm moving up to a normal stitch length. I am stitching here on the Bernina Q16, so I do have stitch regulation. If you do not have stitch regulation because you're quilting on a domestic machine, certainly just try to go kind of smooth and steady. And this video is actually speeded up. So I'm quilted back down into the corner. Let's try to make this more interesting by quilting leaves nested within this first leaf. And in this case, I'm using my Every Leaf Set 1 set of templates, and you can tell that because it's a narrow leaf rather than a wide leaf. The wide leaves are in Every Leaf Set 2. So that's a leaf and a leaf. Let's put in some more leaves. There's 4 templates in set 1, so you can really do some unique designs. Every time I quilt around these shapes, I'm lining up the vertical lines on the template over the vertical line I drew on the fabric. Normally I like to draw with chalk, but I drew a little darker of a line in this case so you could see. And I'm coming back down to the base. So that gives me a really pretty leaf and a leaf and a leaf motif. Next, let's do a leaf row. And this time I'm going to use the center line on the template to stay vertically centered within my border that I've drawn. Now there are a couple different ways to execute a row of leaves. So the first would require you to quilt a leaf and a half each time. And in this case, I change direction with every leaf that I quilt. So I move the template over and I'm ready to begin the next leaf. And you can see those black curved lines on the template lie immediately over the motif that I just quilted. I go around the leaf again, a leaf and a half. And I shift the template over. I'm traveling clockwise again, so I go clockwise and then counterclockwise. And basically, that's to prevent me backing out of points. Sometimes that doesn't look great, so in general, I try to avoid that when quilting. Let's switch methods and create a leaf row another way. So in this case, I quilt the bottom of the first motif, then the top of the second, the bottom of the third, and I complete the row just quilting half of a leaf. And then I continue back across the row, catching all the portions of the leaves that I didn't yet quilt. So I'm working back here. Just so you can see it, you have options. I'll return where I started. And then I'll quilt down to one of the white lines. And I think I want to create an offset row of leaves, and that's how you do it. You line up the template so that the white curved lines go over what you've previously quilted, and that creates the perfect offset. This is a really, really easy pattern to stitch because it is an internal shape, but it creates such a beautiful effect. So as you can see, as I work down the quilt, I'm watching those white lines. Leaves look great whether they're on traditional quilts or more modern quilts. There's a lot of design options. So there we go, an interlocking row of leaves. So you can create a row of simple leaves, or you can create a row of leaves that nest within each other, You can even have their nesting change direction. And finally, you can create a double row of leaves for those really wide borders. Let's create a column of leaves. So I've gone ahead and extended the center line of that first leaf down the fabric, and I'm bringing the foot down, and now I slip the template around the neck of the foot, and I quilt one side of the leaf. Then I move the template down and I quilt the other side of the next leaf. I return back up, completing the motifs. Let's quilt an offset column of leaves. So you can probably guess you use the white lines on the template for this. So I'm going to be quilting a leaf about there. So I'm going to quilt down to a point where those white lines almost they come in or they intersect the inner edge of the template. That's my branching off point. I went a little too far here, so I'm going to back up a little, and I move the template down. And if you're in the right position, those white lines line up right over the previous column of leaves. This can make such a pretty sashing design. So there you go. That's how you create an offset column of leaves. One of the best things about the leaf templates is you can use them to create cathedral windows. Now, you can also do this with my oval templates, but this is just a nice option. So here, I quilt from the halfway point on the leaf up and then down again. It's so easy. Again, it's an internal shape. So now quilt up, and then down, up, and then down. Of course, if you want to center this in the border, you start in the center and work out, or you mark the center and you work in to the corners and create a compensating motif in the center. So that's just a really quick bonus. Now, if I want to create offset cathedral windows, I of course use the white lines on the templates to do that. So the white lines are lying directly over my previous row of quilting. This is one of the fanciest looking designs out there, and it's actually so easy to create with the Every Leaf templates. Next up, let's quilt a leaf blossom. Now you could do an 8-leaf blossom, you could do a 6-leaf blossom, a 4-leaf blossom. I'm using my Every Angle quilting template, because of course it has angles on it, to draw 60-degree lines, which means I will be quilting a 6-leaf blossom. Now this is great for a hexagon quilt. You might use an 8-leaf blossom for a square block. The possibilities are endless. So I'm actually going to create 2 leaves on each spoke, I think, here. So I'll do a large leaf, and then I'll do a smaller leaf on each of the spokes. So you start in the center, and you bring your bobbin thread up, and then of course, you bring your foot down. You slip your leaf over the neck of the foot, and that channel is just big enough to slip it over the foot, but not to quilt down it, which is what I want, because I want you to have crisp corners at the points of your leaf. Okay, so when I get to an outer point, I'm going to switch, and I'm actually going to quilt a smaller leaf before continuing on. This is entirely optional. It's up to you if you do that. So now I'm quilting the smaller leaf, and this is a wider leaf motif. I am using my Leaf Set 2 templates here. And now I'm returning to the larger leaf and quilting back down to the center. So that's one of the spokes. It's done. Now I rotate my template. I make sure the vertical line is in line with that spoke, and I quilt the next motif. And when I get to the point, I have to switch templates, quilt the smaller leaf, and then return. Time to quilt back down to the center. Now I rotate my template, and oftentimes I choose to go in a way that will create more of a curve rather than a sharp point, and I do that to kind of hide my mistakes. It's really hard to make all the points meet, so I try just not to have points. I try to head in a direction where I'm going to get a less abrupt point. Now this type of motif, this very geometric, very regular motif, would look great surrounded by free motion, but if you prefer a less heavily quilted quilt, this would be fine. You don't even have to add free motion to this if it is done in a block. Switching my template once again. I have wool batting here and it creates a lovely puffy look on the quilt. And I'm actually using my cotton shot pearl for Contempo of Benertex. I love the way the light plays off this fabric. It's just fabulous. Have to switch my template again. I'm almost done. I have one more spoke after this. Now, if you liked this video and you like my templates, please subscribe to me on YouTube. It's Amanda Murphy Design, and join me in my Facebook group, Quilting with Amanda Murphy. I do a lot of live streams in both places to give tips and tricks for ruler work. What a beautiful, impressive, and easy motif to quilt. Of course, you don't have to change out the rulers each time. You can do something very simple. So this is a 4-leaf blossom, and then we have an 8-leaf blossom without the leaves inside. I did want to give you a little bonus in this video, and that's how to do an orange peel design. Now this requires a bit of marking. So I have my 3-inch template for my Every Leaf Set 2, it's wider, and I've gone ahead and drawn dots at 3-inch intervals, sort of like a grid. So you'd have to do some marking to get this done. But basically what I do is I connect the points using the leaf template, and it should fit perfectly between the dots because we measured them, right? So I'm going to go ahead and quilt down from the first dot to the second dot. And there's 6 million different ways you could execute this pattern. If I was doing this over the whole quilt, I would likely do all the columns and then all the rows, working up and back. But I'm just doing 2 little small orange peel motifs here, so I'm not going to follow that path. So basically, I'm connecting the dots, right? And I'm going to complete this motif. It's not actually a perfect circle, but it works just perfectly for orange peels. It doesn't cross really. Now here I could go back and finish that first motif, but instead I think I'm going to travel around and do that second motif, finish it, and then complete the first. As I said, if I was doing this over a whole quilt, I'd do all the columns and all the rows, starting in the center. That probably is the easiest way to execute it. This is a lovely classic design, but it also looks great on modern quilts, and I love those type of designs, like Baptist fans are another one that are geometric but timeless, and they look good on almost anything. This is certainly easy because we're quilting an internal shape, and we are almost done. So that's an example of the type of orange peel design that you can do with the Every Leaf templates. Next, let's look at some of these designs on a quilt top. So this is my very popular twirl quilt. It's a simple foundation piece pattern, and it's easier than it looks. You can find the pattern on my website, but in this pattern, in the borders, I've used the motifs that you can make with my Every Petal Set 2 and Every Leaf Set 1 quilting templates to create a dynamic look. I hope you have fun incorporating leaf motifs into your quilting designs. To see my live streams, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Amanda Murphy Design, and join my Facebook group, Quilting with Amanda Murphy. I hope to see you there.